Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Jenny White.
So I was just out there fighting with Rumble again this morning.
Imagine that.
I'm so mad.
What is it with you? You always got to be fighting somebody. You're fighting the state, you're fighting Rumble, you're fighting surveillance, you're fighting all this bad legislation. I mean,
you sound like my husband who calls me Battle Jenny.
That's why I make all those Viking memes of you all the time. You're like a Viking out there just raiding all these people, behind closed doors that are trying to do bad to us.
Well, honestly, I'm so frustrated with dumb Rumble. It's just the most bizarre thing. So they have us on the Gifting Oklahoma Tax Dollars with Representative Jay Stiegel, which is happening at 1:00. Yeah. And not right now. So I've tried to it took me a second to get on because I had to put out breadcrumbs to see if I could get people to find out where we were. Yeah. So yeah, one of these days I'm going to send probably an ugly email to Rumble. I'm like, do you know how long it takes to set this up for us to, All right. Well, we have a great show this morning. What do you think?
Well, one of my favorite subjects ever, the mass surveillance of all of us that I just cannot, to me, it's just complete slow kill. They just install camera here, a device there, whatever, and it's just going to ultimately over 5 or 10 years, it's going to roll out to complete an absolute surveillance 24/7, which I just think is, it's a violation, of my right. I mean, period. I mean, you just can't, it drives me crazy.
Well, I'm not sure that I think maybe Marvin would argue with you and say we're pretty much surveilled as it is 24 hours a day.
Well, yes, we are, but it can be so much worse, in my opinion. They can just turn this thing up because most people don't even know. I mean, look at like when we did the first flock camera, podcast. People they had no idea. They had no idea they were installed statewide like they are. I mean, it's just scary.
Well, and I love our guest this morning because I think if Well, we know there's one, but I'm not sure that there are many more other, sadly, other Tom Ganns in the legislature who are really, really concerned about this. And so
Yeah.
I'm so glad he's here with us this morning.
Well, and think, Jenny, just that interim study that he did should literally just, I mean, that should just be shown in school. That literally should be shown in school to watch a police officer literally say, "Hey, you came in Oklahoma. What were you doing 2 weeks ago? What were you doing last month? Why'd you come in here? What do you know?" I mean, that is just so blatant.
Well, did you see what Denise said? At one specific intersection in Enid, there are at least 10 cameras.
Wow.
Well, we keep talking about this all day, but the thing of it is we've got two great guests, and I really want to bring them on because they've got so much to say, and they are so helpful for us. So I'm going to bring on Representative Gann first. Good morning, Representative Gann. How are you?
Good morning. Thank you for having me. It's good to be on your show.
Please, thank you. Thank you for coming. Don't thank us. We thank you. And Marven Goodman, I'm going to bring him in. And Marven, oh my gosh, Marven, I don't even want to think about how long we've known each other.
It's been a day or two, a minute anyway.
Quite a few number of years. And the fun about Marven and I is we sat on the
ACOG.
Yeah, but I was trying to think. I keep forgetting what ACOG stands for.
Association of Central Oklahoma Governments.
That's what it is. Thank you. I was struggling with the A one. Yes. And we had I don't know if you saw it, but we had Michael and I did a whole show on a thing that they came up with at ACOG and we're trying to pimp out to the various cities and towns, which was pretty much along the lines of what we're talking about today.
Right. I got one thing for Michael. Gosh, I want you to know that the whole Flock community camera organization covers more than 5,000 communities across the United States right now. 5,000 townships, homeowners associations, and communities that are all tied into local police and that sort of thing. It's just amazing how this has grown, the surveillance state. But anyway, I wanted to kind of bring you up to speed on that just a little bit.
Well, Representative Gann, you and your interim study on surveillance through automatic license plate readers, because I just want to take 1 second and make sure that people understand Flock, Flock, is a private company that produces software that allows law enforcement to collect data on your license plate. Is that correct?
That is correct. They also have the hardware. They supply the hardware, which are the black poles with the solar panel and then the small camera on there. And of course, the operating software that goes along with it. And Flock is a corporation that's been in business. The CEO is a person by the name of Langley, and his vision for America is to have a Flock camera on every corner. And because he truly believes that this technology will solve our societal ills and create a crimeless society, which is a noble quest, I would think, and a noble idea. But one thing that he lacks is what our founding fathers knew, is that the heart of man is dark, and you will never, ever be able to do that. A camera on a pole is not going to change the heart of man. So we're going to be stuck with crime from here on out. And the problem there then is, if we get a camera on every corner, and we're in 5,000 entities that Marvin mentioned, at what point do we reach a level of saturation that we are under total constant surveillance? And that is a real problem that we're trying to get people to recognize and to understand.
So I want to cut to the chase right now before we even get down the road. So many people, and I'm sure they've said this to you, Marven, because Marven was county commissioner in Logan County for how many years, Marven?
8 years.
Okay. So Marven's been a county commissioner. I've been a mayor. Tom, you've been a representative for how long?
I'm in my 9th year.
Okay, yeah. So I think all of us, and Michael, you've just heard it on the street. So many people say, "Well, if you're not doing anything wrong, then what does it matter?" Who's heard that?
We've all heard that. Yes.
Can both of you please tag team that very erroneous thought and let's get that wiped out?
Well, here's the issue. It's not, we hear over and over all the anecdotal stories of success that these cameras have and how they capture this and how police have been able to use this, and it's all in the name of safety. But the problem here in the state of Oklahoma is we have a lack of statutory authority for them to perform these duties within our body of law. And we have a duty not only to our law, but also to the Constitution to make sure that these people who are operating these systems that have a tremendous amount of power over the populace are following the law. So we get into a situation where all these anecdotal stories provide evidence, but of the success of the camera, but they have no bearing on the fact that the reality that the law that just does not cover their authority to operate. And so we're in this kind of no man's land here where you have this tendency to try to go and solve crime and enforce the law, but you're not operating in a lawful manner to do so. And it's just ironic that this is the situation we're in. And so when people we hear a lot about safety.
Ironic or terrifying?
Both. It's pretty scary. I mean, it really is. Teddy Roosevelt, in the opening slide of my interim study, he says 3 things that will destroy America is prosperity at any price, peace at any price, and then safety first before duty first. And government can't guarantee your safety, so we have a duty to the laws and to make sure that we're providing for them. And it's just ironic that the law enforcement believe that they can do whatever they want to. However, they have an effort coming to the state capitol with 1620 last spring, trying to pass a law to do what they're doing already. So we're really in this state of you've got to really have some honesty and deal with what we're in to define the problem. And the problem is you're not authorized, other than for the compulsory insurance law, to utilize these cameras for what you're doing, and it's placing in jeopardy the evidence that's gathered with it. That's already been tried in McLean County. So this is where we are, and trying to get people to even just honestly define what the issue is. They always default back to the anecdotal success stories, and that's not getting us anywhere right now.
Well, when I talked to my representative, who is the former head of the FOP in Oklahoma, he told me that we have to have these things, because if we don't have these things, how would you feel if your child were kidnapped? And the only way that you could find them was by looking at license plate readers. And then you were actually able to find them because you could do all of this, surreptitious police work. And my argument to him was, there have been children kidnapped for eons. I mean, all we have to do is look at who was the famous family in the 1920s who had the Lindberghs, had their baby kid. I mean, so it's not as though this is a new thing, right?
Mm-hmm.
But regular police work, you're up, you get to talk to people, you go out and you do things. One of my arguments against this too is it's removing what little conversation we're able to have with the police as it is. I mean, now it's all of this stuff. Now the people aren't even close to them anymore. They're not even their community members. They're just these blips on a screen.
Oh, and everybody agrees that those cameras would add value to that police effort, and they would be able to use it to capture that person that kidnapped. But the problem is that when you run by these cameras, they capture everything. They're motion detectors, and when they detect motion, they take pictures of anything that comes by. And then the software the software then parses out the necessary data for the tags on the back of the cars. But that data that records whether it's a blue car or a black car, what kind of bumper sticker you have on, all still resides in that data. And so there's a problem then when you talk about having probable cause to go capture that kidnapper, but you've got data out there and that you're able to access probable cause. And a warrant is really necessary in order to go after persons. And if you have a situation like that that's immediate, you don't necessarily have to get away to go after the bad guy. About the tremendous amount of data that's collected that gets stored somewhere, and then it's a matter of just adjusting the software as to whether or not you want to look at people's faces or not. So we're in this real dangerous situation where.
Back up just a second. Did I hear that correctly? So this can actually look at people's faces as well as their license plates?
Well, if you're walking towards this flock camera and it takes a picture of you, it's just not taking pictures of cars going past it. It's taking pictures of anything that moves in front of that camera. It's detected. It's a motion detected or activated camera.
Yeah, I'd probably say at the right angle, looking out your window in your car, it can catch that in one way or another.
Yeah, so I'm saying with all this data that they're gathering and storing, at what point does someone adjust the software then to go after facial recognition? It's headed that way. Well, and all you have to do is look at communist China to see how creative that they have become with their surveillance system, and this is what we have to guard against. So what I'm saying is, no matter what the technology, no matter how far we get advanced, our constitutional rights will never go away because they're given by God. And Fourth Amendment right to privacy is one of them. And we have to make sure those safeguards are in place and respected by law enforcement in order to protect us. And right now, they have no respect for the law that they're trying to enforce if they're going to do it the way they're doing. And it's time that we really sit down and have an honest discussion about it.
Well, yeah, just to make another point on that, Tom, I know you said that, they store that data. Supposedly they only store it for 30 days. How do we know that? How do we know that this data isn't compiled somewhere else? Do we have access to all this data? These are publicly, public funds. Do we have access to their database? Can we actually see, what they're capturing?
This data is gathered by the flock servers, and then it's spread out nationwide. And then it goes to all the three-letter agencies, your FBI, your ATF, and it's stored on their servers. Anything that's digitized becomes dangerous to you because it never goes away. And deleting information doesn't mean that it's been destroyed and you can never look at it again. It just means that it resides and is housed on a different sector of your hard drive. That they can call up at some particular time. It's just out of the way. So delete and destroyed is two different things. The data that is gathered is accessed by the federal agencies, the Department or Drug Enforcement Agency. It was determined by the Wall Street Journal. They found out that recently that the Drug Enforcement Agency accesses your local and state cameras. And because they're using this flock system, they're using the local systems as part of their overall federal system in order to do what they need to. So they have access to that data, and then they store it on whatever servers that they have. So it just never goes away. And it's just, so you can say, well, we delete ours at a local level for every 30 days, but you're still on the system forever.
Well, and I'd like to point out that Edmond, where my partner Michael over there lives, Edmond police have said that they will not release the list of agencies that can see their ALPR data.
Yes, I think that was a non-doc article that I have listed in my interim study. And then, of course, Tulsa wouldn't reveal those that they share it with. But it doesn't take long to go through the list, say at Round Rock, Texas, or Del City, and you can see Tulsa as an entity that is shared with Del City. or Edmond on another listing of a municipality that might list theirs out, and understand that it's just another node in the web of this huge surveillance blanket that lays over the United States right now. It's just another.
Here's a question maybe for Marvin. Do we know the actual location of every one of these cameras in the state, or do they just say, oh, we have X amount in this town or X amount, on the highway? I mean, do we actually know the locations? Have they told us?
Well, that's a really great question. And the answer is no, they haven't told us, but some communities will tell you through an open records request. As a matter of fact, we just got back an open records request from the city of Guthrie, and they've disclosed where their 10 current cameras are at. They had 12. 2 of them were on the state highway, which were removed and haven't been replaced back up. And that was done back in October, back around the time of Tom Gann's interim study, where we asked the assistant director of ODOT about that, if they were allowed to do that on state right-of-ways. And the answer was no, they're not. But back to the Fourth Amendment, gosh, that's an interesting topic. One of the things that I believe our founders believed in was the right to privacy of our papers. Our papers were what was important to them at that time, which is our papers are where we kept our deepest, darkest thoughts and secrets, right? And people say, well, you shouldn't have secrets from the government. I think that it's just the other way around. I think the government shouldn't have secrets from the people.
Amen. It's kind of what Julia said a minute ago about we should gather data on everything government instead of the other way around.
Absolutely. So my thoughts are, if those people that say things like, if you have nothing to hide, then you shouldn't be worried about it. Those are the people that should probably start wearing cameras around recording everything they say and do, so the government can know who's talking bad about them and that sort of thing. I really have a tough time swallowing that one.
Oh, no, I want to slap people who say I just keep thinking if you slap them really good, they'll wake up and go, gosh, that was a dumb thing to say. But, here's the thing. I think so many things happened, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I think so many things happened under George Bush after 9/11. I think the Patriot Act has given rise to a surveillance. I don't know how I want to say it, but it's like a surveillance subset of government, wherein everybody in government now feels like it's okay to monitor all the citizens because they may do something bad.
Well, it's that administrative state, Jenny. It's that administrative state.
Along those lines, Jenny, one of the things that comes out is the theory of terrorism, right? So it kind of aligns with the same thing that we're talking about here, spying on Americans. And that is the theory of terrorism. One of the things that they will quote to you is that if you knew that a terrorist who had access to a nuclear device, probably, was in a room full of 10 people, would you torture all 10 people to find out where that bomb was located if you were able to do that? I mean, that's kind of the question that it comes down to. Would you violate the law, the Fourth Amendment, just because it was expeditious to do so in solving a crime? And that's kind of some of the pushback that I've been getting with my stance on the Fourth Amendment. One of the things Kash Patel said was that he would work with the Congress to redesign the restrictions on the Fourth Amendment to allow the FBI to immediately investigate a U.S. citizen who was caught under FISA 702. I think that's kind of the thought process that's going through all of the people that work in the federal government at this time. I know that that Cash is probably a great guy and is going to be a great director of the FBI, but as we go forward, as we start watching what's going on at the Congress up there on the federal side, we need to be very careful about that.
Well, I think that's a great point. Tom, I want to flip it back
Yes.
to you. Because one of the things that I think both Michael and I were just aghast during your interim study, you had a video that you played.
Yes.
Will you please go? I didn't want to play it because I felt like it was going to take too much time away from the actual discussion. You can find the video on our YouTube channel. It's actually out there. I think it's gotten something like, I'm not kidding, Tom. I think it's gotten something like 3,000 or 8,000 views.
Good.
Because people it upsets them to think that this kind of thing could happen. So can you explain the interaction that was in your interim study and kind of go over that a little bit?
The video itself demonstrates that your movements are being tracked and your movements are being stored. And the video begins with the law enforcement approaching the vehicle and telling the person that he had crossed the white fog line and that he was just checking to see if he was intoxicated and wasn't going to give him any type of ticket or anything like that, but then asked him to come back to the vehicle and to discuss and be asked more questions. And then within that discussion, he starts asking him, the video has March 18th on the date of the video. And he asked him, hey, you were up here on March 10th. What are you doing up here on March 10th? And of course, a question like that from law enforcement officer would disturb anybody.
When you're in their car.
Yes,
too.
right. And when you're under what they call, I think the legal term for that is custodial interrogation. You haven't been arrested. You haven't been Mirandized. You're just in the vehicle. And so he begins to question him about that movement. And then he asked him about his other times that he was up in Oklahoma in January. And what person can remember where they were 2 or 3 weeks ago exactly and at what time? So this agitation that's created in the individual of being asked these questions is I think, in error, seen as some sort of admission to guilt or that he's hiding something. And the police officer becomes extremely suspicious about it. And it goes down from there. Then he asks if he can search the vehicle he asked if he has anything to hide, any large amounts of cash. Are you a dope peddler? Do you have any marijuana, methamphetamine? Just goes through the list. And by that time, he's pretty agitated. And then he asks, hey, you mind if I search your vehicle? And he said, of course I mind. And he goes, well, I just want to run the drug dog around the vehicle. And then he agrees to that. But then the video then shows that he is just going through the vehicle. He's searching the glove compartment. He's going through the duffel bags in the back. And at the end, there's another drug enforcement officer that shows up, and he starts talking to him about how he felt like the person lied to him when he asked him about where he was and how many trips that he made up there. He felt like he was a little personally bothered by the fact that he called him one of those trained enforcers and the pushback that he got from the individual. But the final really, I think, gotcha of the moment at the end of the tape, at the end of the video, is where he said, I really just stopped him because his tailpipe was hanging down, which then begs the question, did he use crossing the white fog line as just an excuse to pull him over? And so we have this whole scenario of where I think this shows a great deal of too much reliance on the technology, too much reliance and too much read into the fact that, okay, this guy comes up here often. Maybe he has family. Maybe he has work. Maybe it's just totally innocent. And yet the law enforcement officer seems to immediately suspect something if the guy gets out of sorts with the questioning. So this really is a demonstration, I think, of not only that they do have a record of your travels, they do save that, and you will be asked a question about it. How about we get to a place in America where you're pulled over, hey, you've crossed the white fog line, and I see that you go to Starbucks every day at noon to get you a latte. I mean, just tracking your travels and asking questions like that it's just incredible what type of scenarios you can think of. And then I can't remember where I was last week exactly where we went. I'd have to think about it. And because I have to think about it is no evidence that I might be guilty of something. It's a thought process everybody has to go through.
Well, I wanted to mention something, although my dogs are howling in the background. So that's an interesting, it's providing a nice soundtrack. Here's my biggest issue with everything that you said. In America, of all the countries in the world, we are innocent before anything. You have to prove us guilty in a court of law that's staffed by our peers. But what that whole video that you showed, I think the reason why I got so many views is people are like, he literally decided that he was guilty of something before anything else. And once you put somebody in your camera and they're locked in, I have a friend who's a police officer. I've been in the back of a police car. You can't get out. The intimidation factor of that is absolutely ludicrous to me. And I watched that, and Stephanie's going to tell me I need to take blood pressure medicine because I got so mad about that. I really think my face got red. And clearly the guy who had been stopped knew his rights. I knew what the Constitution said and was trying to be as nice as he could, but push back as much as he could. Mm-hmm. And that's what bothered me. What's happening and let me stack one more question on that, Tom. So you've said that they're operating this technology illegally. They don't have the right to do that. There's nothing in the law that allows them to do that. And then you've got a police officer who basically pulls this guy out, makes him guilty before he's innocent, puts him in the back of the car. Why are we not following the law? Why can we not follow the law? Where is justice anymore? What's happened to this?
I think that's the question I've been asking, and I do not get any answer for. I do know that they have these systems on their vehicles and they're on the poles and everything. Yet the law, whenever it was passed in 2016, if you go out and listen to the audio tapes of the committee meeting that this was in order for them to even get it passed through committee, they had to reassure the members there over and over that this system, this surveillance system that they were putting in place for the compulsory insurance law would only be used for that. That's why that prohibition is in statute that says any information gathered through an ALPR system by an individual or agency is not allowed. I mean, that's a carve out that they could not get that bill passed unless that wording had been in there. And now we see the liberty and the lack of respect for that law that has gone on now for years. And now they're trying to come back and to get that authorization. And yet without having any respect for the law by saying, yes, this is a problem. We need to do something about this. And yes, this creates this Fourth Amendment issue. And yes, we have evidence that we've collected unlawfully and we can't use it in courts now. So we have to have this day of reckoning, I guess, to set us on firm foundation that we can move forward. And you can't do that when people are unwilling and bow up and think that they have because they have access to these cameras, it gives them some sort of human superpowers that exempts them from the law. And it's troubling. It really is.
Well, I think, Tom, somewhat of a precedent has kind of been set by the Supreme Court, and I'm just trying to go off of my memory, but back in 2018, there was a case, Carpenter versus the United States, and they were using the cell phone data to track this guy. Law enforcement was, and I think in that case, the Supreme Court ruled that they didn't have a warrant to actually track him, and ultimately, I think he won. I think he won that case over the unlawful search and seizure, private property, the whole thing being secure in your papers. I think he wound up winning that. I'm gonna have to look at that, but I think there's a precedent, at least, to addressing the phenomenon of this 24-hour, dragnet surveillance in one way or another. I hope that that's something we can use in the future to stop this.
And I do cover that in my interim study, the Carpenter case, and I make the analogy of you have all these cell towers that have these cell phone pings, and then they're able to develop a path that you might have taken, and then if we have a flock camera on every corner, what's the difference between a flock camera and a cell tower? It's doing the same thing. So at some point, we're going to reach a saturation level of these cameras and of these devices that you cannot go anywhere without being surveilled. And I think then that falls into the same, and you can be surveilled without a warrant, and that's problematic. And it gets us right back into the same situation, I think, with Carpenter. But and we're real close to being to that point. So when you get 4 or 5 cameras over here in Pryor, and you've got how many cameras in Guthrie, and then you have over 200 cameras in Tulsa, I mean, at what point do we reach a point of saturation?
Well, here's maybe for Marvin also. What's the actual efficacy of these cameras? I mean, I know Flock claims literally on their website that they've reduced crime by 70% in communities. I mean, where's that data coming from? Is that all internal? Is that their own stuff? Is there an independent agency actually saying, yeah, these things are doing good? I mean, how do we know that they're even doing anything for crime?
That's another great question there, Michael. One of the things that we uncovered with our open records request with the city of Guthrie, we asked them how many times have they taken material offline from the flock cameras and used and stored it as evidence to be used in a case. And they came back and told us that they had never done that. They had zero evidence stored for cases that they were using flock cameras for. And it's just amazing. We have there's over 100 government agencies that have access to the flock cameras that are in Guthrie, Oklahoma. ATF is one of them, and a lot of those what were they called, fusion centers across the United States have access to them as well. Out-of-state fusion centers are tracking what's going on in the little town of Guthrie, but like I said, they're in a network of over 5,000 cameras across the United States that Flock owns and operates. It's just amazing what's going on today. The other thing that we've uncovered in the city of Guthrie is, and we'll be publishing a new article on that this coming Monday morning early. I'm just finishing up polishing on that.
Plug your Substack real quick.
The Substack, it's the Sooner Sentinel at substack.com. Anyway, so what we're looking at here is where the chief of police of Guthrie has done some very, I'm going to say shady things, what we would term as shady things, where he's included the folks from Flock on emails and blind copied them on emails that went out to the city chamber. It's just amazing. The city councilmen and council ladies, that are on that didn't know that he was blind copying them. And he also said that there was this one loud and boisterous person on the city council complaining about Flock, and he needed this guy from Flock's help to quell that down a little bit. He sent that out, and nobody from the city council knew about it until we got those documents back from open records requests from the city of Guthrie. And thank goodness that they shared them with us. I think that shows that the city, the new city management, the new city manager is okay with providing the documents that they need to provide. Transparency is absolute. So that's encouraging in one regard, but very discouraging in another. Where he's kind of the city police chief is kind of being a bully, and you know, it makes you wonder who's actually running the city, or who did he think was running the city? Was it him or the city council, who's supposed to make policy? The city council are elected officials. Elected officials are supposed to make policy, and the city employees, which he is one of those, are supposed to enforce that policy. It's not supposed to be the other way around. So I'm going to kind of leave it there and continue to polish on that article a little bit. Like I said, it'll be published early Monday morning, and I hope that we'll have some more views on that as well.
Well, and I always share your Substack on our weekly news roundup. I wanted to get back to a couple of things, Tom, that as a legislator, I'm extremely interested in hearing your take on. All of this from the beginning started with this goofy need to have compulsory insurance. Can you please explain to me why the legislature wants to force us to buy anything? They already force us to pay our taxes. They'll take our homes away. They'll take our liberty away if we don't give them their due. So I want to know why it is that they had to force us to buy car insurance.
Well, at the time that this whole discussion came about was way back into 2013, and they passed, they had a problem, a statistic out there that Oklahoma was the highest in the nation for uninsured motorists. And we were 25% at 25%. And that meant 1 in 4 Oklahomans didn't have compulsory insurance. And in order to try to get people to buy that insurance and to have that, they passed House Bill 1167, I believe it was. And that bill required law enforcement to, if they found you were without insurance, you'd confiscate your tag, they'd take it to the courthouse, you'd have to go through to court and have to pay a fine in order to get it back. And by the time that Senate Bill 359 came about in 2016, that introduced the compulsory insurance law, that had a tremendous effect on the uninsured motorist rate. And so by 2016, the uninsured motorist rate had dropped down to about 13.6%. So it had a major impact on that stat. And I know I can't really tell you why they, I think that is an issue within itself, forcing people to buy insurance for on these minimum levels. But this is the argument that they used in order to get us into where we are today with the compulsory insurance law and the cameras. So I'm not directly answering your question, but I'm trying to explain to you that they use that as a statistic to convince the committee chair that this was necessary. So in 2016, they were still touting the 25% level when it was actually 13.6, and they actually had tremendous success without those cameras, without that system that's in place now. And then by the time they implemented the system in 2018 because it was passed in 16. They couldn't get the emergency passed because the emergency failed. It didn't go in till the fall of 2016. And by the time they got the bidding done and they got the system up and running, it was 2018. And the percentage was even further lowered. So then COVID happened and it jumped up again. But right now, Oklahoma is we're 28th in the nation. We're at 11.8% of uninsured motorists, which begs the question then, is it as effective as we think it is? And
well, so let me ask you this question. So I'm going to sound a little like a judge here or an attorney. So is it your understanding that people could buy uninsured motorist insurance on their own?
Yes, I think, I buy insurance to cover uninsured motorists. I mean,
there was no reason for the government to force us to have to buy insurance. And here's my follow-up to that. So if the government is going to force us to buy insurance because of some kind of statistic, and I think it's interesting that Robert, I'm going to put it up again. Data is easily manipulated to benefit your narrative. Figures don't lie, but liars figure. And I think when we do things like go on percentages like that, I think we could say something like this. Bald tires cause 25, and I'm just making this up, but I'm making the point. Bald tires cause 25% of accidents in Oklahoma. So now we're going to have legislation that is going to force people to buy tires once their tire tread becomes whatever it is that we're going to say it is. And then that's going to prevent these accidents. I mean, do you not feel like there's kind of am I making apples and apples argument there?
I think that's a pretty good analogy. I think the bottom line was the DA council wanted this as a revenue stream for them, and they got tired of coming to the legislature for an appropriation every year. And they told them that if they had this system in place, they wouldn't need the appropriation. And that's why. And I even heard the 25% being touted in the meeting in another community the other day, and yet that's not the case. So this was a revenue stream. It's a revenue opportunity for the DA council to have, and then as discussed by another DA, whenever I made that point in another meeting, and that they said, well, if you would fund us the way it's supposed to be funded, we would not have had to have this system. So it really, was it really trying to?
Goodness. I can't hear you anymore because the blood pressure is rising in my ears, and so I can't hear you anymore.
So was it a matter of public safety? Was it a matter of trying to get people to buy insurance, or was it just a matter of funding? And I'm telling you, money is a big issue in all of this, and Flock Camera has a powerful lobby. And they've been lobbying the Senate really hard here before the session started, and they're trying to champion their bill. That the bill in the Senate's 857, Senate Bill 857, and that's the one that they're hoping to get passed. But as it proved in the last session in 24, their appetite to approve additional powers through this system is just not there, because the last bill went down by 68% of the sitting members in the Senate, which was about 28 members voted against the 1620. So there's just a powerful. It's really, I think at the end of the day, it's about the money.
Well, I think Michael and I have always said that. I mean, haven't we, Michael? And everybody who's reasonable, Tom, I think understands that money trumps everything. I mean, I've written 2 pieces now. The last piece that I had just this Tuesday in the Federalist is about tax incentives. And how many, yes. And we're going to talk about that at 1:00 this afternoon, and the amount of money that our Oklahoma government steals from taxpayers to give to private companies who then bring things here. So it's just this, I'll scratch your back, you scratch my back. And nobody gives one rat's behind about whether or not our liberty is being infringed. And yet, I know you, of all people, well know this. Your whole job is to protect my liberty. That's your entire
Yes.
job.
Yes, it is, and then when you when you have an agency or an entity that has self-funded like they are with a system, then at what point do you bring them back to the legislature for their accountability? And so it was really an unwise thing to cut somebody outside, to carve them outside the appropriation process, because with the appropriation process is the accountability. You got to bring them back, just have them justify what they need. And that's a workaround that we have right now at the DA Council, and it's problematic, and it's hard to hold them accountable on this.
Well, I
And
want
then
to.
we could talk all day long about the incentives, and I'm glad you're going to have Jay Stiegel on here this afternoon.
Well, I think he was hoping you were going to come on with him, so I don't know if we can talk
well,
you into it or not. But
I tell you, we might try that one of these days. I tell you what, we see eye to eye on that, and these incentives, as you can see, if you look at the list of who just sponsored the Speakers Ball this year, it's almost like a very high level, sophisticated money laundering system.
You mean like OG&E, which gets the top amount of all tax credits in Oklahoma, and yet we still have to pay our electric bill?
Well, and they come to the Oklahoma Corporation Commission and ask for rate increases over and over again, and I haven't seen a no vote come out of there in a while. So yes, but they fund these campaigns, and then the members, they cut out these sweetheart deals, provide them all these incentives, and then they make these funds available back to the campaigns again. It's just a vicious cycle.
Yeah. Well, let me go back to this, because Stephanie said, I'm confused. Back in 1997, I lost my driver's license because my insurance lapsed. They did not have cameras then. And then they didn't even have the compulsory insurance law by then. The company reported it to the state. How did that happen, do you suspect?
I would not know. I would not know about that process.
Okay.
That's 97. Here again, I can't even tell you where I was last week, so I'm not even going to try to go back to 97. But my guess is that there are, as insurance are regulated heavily by the state, and they have to have so many in reserves and everything. I'm sure there was probably some sort of process they had to work out with the insurance department in order to get law enforcement to suspend that driver's license. It had to be some sort of reporting aspect there between that company and the person in law enforcement. That's just my guess.
Well, let me ask both of you this question. So when I had my argument with my representative, former FOP president, John George, and I said, I just don't feel like these are necessary. I mean, I think we can go back to doing, street kind of policing. I don't think, technology needs to be that prevalent. And he said, well, really all we're trying to do is get guardrails. We're putting guardrails on this. What's a guardrail? I mean, when you have legislation that's then it's a law, but there aren't any guardrails on it. I mean, somebody help me with this.
Well, and if you compare 857 and you compare 1626, which is his bill in the House, and I'm not sure what he means by guardrails, because I don't think they're really adequate in order to ensure that people's Fourth Amendment rights are going to be honored and respected, because there's a lot of process in between the physical storage of data and who has access. There's internal policies that have to be dealt with, and it's going to be hard, I think, without a lot of legislation in order to assure that these departments are following that aspect of it, because guardrails is a real broad term. What does that mean? Your idea of a guardrail may not be my idea of a guardrail, and then that guardrail may not be really high enough or broad enough to really take into consideration some of the really bad things that you can do with this technology, and especially technology that's available to anybody in the internet. If you talk to anybody who understands the dark web at all, these cameras are all accessible by hackers, each and every individual one. And so we have to have that discussion. What does that mean? We have to have data experts come in and tell us where are the pitfalls, where are the holes. And it's really not the physical camera. It's really not the physical chips and everything that make up that componentry that provide you that. It's the data, and it's a software package. Could be looking for tag numbers right now, but all it would take would just be a simple switch within the software to turn it on to start tracking other things about it. And then you have the whole aspect of AI and these data centers that are coming online that the president had in those three tech tycoons in the Roosevelt room talking about these huge data centers that are being put up in Texas. We have one that's maybe proposed over here near my district. And I guess they don't plan on doing away with any of this data if they're going to capture it and store it there. Well, it was pointed out to me last night in our meeting in Bartlesville that over the billions and billions of scans that take place on an annual basis on these license plate readers, they say that 99.5% of them are not associated in whatsoever with any crime, which begs the question then, so are we just doing this for like 0.5% of potential, because then you got captured like 5% of people who may have committed a crime, but then you have to weed out those that might look like a crime but really aren't. And then by the time you get down to the actual ones that you use, is this really an efficient system? It was his question, and that's a great question. So if almost 100% of your stuff that you're collecting is not usable for crime prevention or capturing somebody, why do you need it? And
so then that begs the question, why is it? Because I hear things in it, I hear legislators talking, it just infuriates me. You're just too conservative, Tom. I mean, I guess I don't understand how you don't understand that. You're just too conservative. And
my dad asked my mom that one time. She said, "How do we raise a son so conservative?" And I said, "By the grace of God, Dad, that's how you."
So how do you get these people to understand? How do we get the legislature to understand that our rights mean more than what your ability to see a crime or attack a crime? It's not happening. I mean, again, I argued with my own representative. He just thinks that I'm silly, literally thinks that I'm silly because, well, how could you not want this? Because if your kid were kidnapped, you'd sure want it. How does this happen? I mean, what can we do? Maybe I should say that, because I think all four of us could probably rage all day and raise our cumulative blood pressures pretty high over this whole issue. But what can we do?
Well, I would encourage that legislature to go out and read about the lawsuit from the man who was falsely accused of child trafficking and was caught up in a flock camera and detained for over 40 minutes before they got it figured out. I mean, there are real world examples out here of where this has been problematic. The innocent have been accused just because they're on a chip and they're an array of data somewhere. And without that human element and without the context that is often provided by that human element. So I would encourage them to get out from in front of their ALPR screen and start looking at the cause and effect of some of this, and that we do have a responsibility as legislators to make sure that what we're doing does not hurt the public. And if this goes too far, it will. So that's a problem. You have to be able to, you have to see it for all sides of it if you really want to make the right decision. And it's not about it shouldn't be about a win or a loss, or I've got this many members support me, I've got this many members against. I mean, this any use other than the compulsory insurance law has not been supported by the legislature. It was defeated last year, in the bills that we have right now, I think are inadequate to do it any justice. So they don't have the majority of the people behind this. They might think that they do, and they might tell you all the things that might be right with it, but you're right. our rights and protecting the people and standing for your oath that you took to uphold and defend the Constitution is paramount. And we have to do that.
Well, people are going to have to get involved because, like I said, when you have this perception, and you said it, I think earlier too, Tom, and maybe even Marvin, we have this perception that law enforcement knows better. We have to look up to them. And I have to say, at this point in time, I'm scared to get pulled over by a cop. I'll be frankly honest. I'm scared to get pulled over because I have no idea what they're going to pull up on that screen, because had I been the person, and Michael and I talked about this on the podcast, had I been the person that was in that guy's position where the cop had him in the back of the car and was asking him about his movements over the past 4 months, I would be the one going, I'm not going to answer one dang thing until I have an attorney, because you're not even allowed to ask me this stuff.
Well, yeah,
so
I'd probably be going
I would
ballistic.
go to jail.
Well, so Jenny, back
I would-
to your question about guardrails. One of the things that we looked at when I wrote that last article about those two, the House bill and the Senate bill that's being proposed this year, Senator Weaver proposed one. He had the interim study last summer that we had Jake Merrick on. And I had a little video. I took a little video of him and his response, Jake's response to that, and it was very telling. It was a Fourth Amendment. It was a class on the Fourth Amendment. Anyway, so back to that. It's amazing to me that they're asking for guardrails when, in fact, last year's bill that didn't pass had more restrictions on it, more guardrails, if you will, than the two bills combined that they're trying to run in the House and the Senate this time. Representative Gann also commented on that with me about that very topic. Representative, I'm not sure that if you'd like to cover that just a little bit, or because you made a really great point about not having the guardrails that they were talking about on that, because the two bills were less restrictive than what was proposed last time, and last bill failed miserably.
Yes.
Anyway.
Well, and before we go there, this commentary about you're too conservative. We had the ACLU present in my interim study. I have a lot of this documentation that we have comes from one of the most liberal organizations that we would ever even consider to even associate with. But we overlap on this issue as we do on corporate welfare. We overlap on corporate welfare, and we overlap on freedom. So freedom knows no conservative or liberal. Our founding fathers didn't view our world as conservative or liberal or Democrat or Republican. They viewed the world through freedom and tyranny. And this is really what we're dealing with. Are we going to allow our society to have this level of tyranny over it, or are we going to love our freedom and do what we can to work with anybody that we have that in common with, and to protect our freedom? So I see these guardrails that are lacking that 1620 had it's more has to do with about the retention of data and the storage of data. They have these storage standards, and it's mentioned there's this statistic or this rule or whatever you want to call it that's mentioned that is a standard that they would adhere to with this retention of data. But that's not the issue. If you're networked and you cannot control what somebody else's standard might be, and so you may just be, you might collect it, but then when they access to it, it goes everywhere. So all of these organizations, these three-letter organizations, have been exempt from the Privacy Act of 1974. So are they worried about keeping your stuff private? No, they're not. So then you have the whole aspect of you've got you can control maybe what government does and what people that serve in government or law enforcement does, but then you have these third-party corporations that don't have the corporate entities that don't have the constitutional restrictions that government has.
Well, I'm going to even push back a little bit on that though, Tom, because we can't guarantee what law enforcement is going to do, because in your own study, you even brought up the fact that there were cops who were using this particular the flock data in order to check up on their girlfriends and their wives and stuff. So how in the world are we going to get them to do anything?
Well, exactly. And so the guardrails, it just depends on how far they extend and how tall they are. You're right that there are, if you listen to what's happening federally, nationally, when you had Senator Mike Lee in his interview with Kash Patel, when he was going for the FBI director, Kash Patel mentioned that there were 255,000 instances where the data had been violated there at FISA 702 in that area where that data had been stored. And it went everywhere from a person tracking a person was tracking his dad's whereabouts to make sure he wasn't having an affair on his mother, to checking out your Airbnb customers to make sure that they were good customers. And this was just part of that violation in the use and taking advantage of that. So how do you control that?
Well, and that's
sure don't control it by exempting the Privacy Act of 1974, and so these laws that are attempted to pass at the state level are not going to be adequate. They're not going to be adequate to do that. So you get back to the Senate interim study when you were talking to all of these uniformed police agencies that were statewide, and they were all in that study. And the question was asked about the lawfulness. And he said, look, one of them said they were going to continue to do what they're doing until a court decided that they couldn't. That's where they want to go with this. And they want to be told by the court, which if they're not going to respect the law, why would they respect the decision of a court? And we're really, I think, past that point.
Amen. I'm clipping that part. I do want to stop 1 second and go. We had a really good comment that I want to throw up here. It's a little long, but Gracie actually went out and looked at it. And she said, since January 1st, 1983, the Oklahoma compulsory liability insurance law has required that owners of motor vehicles registered in this state prove that they have liability insurance as a precondition to registering their vehicles. Prior to the amendment of that act, owners were required only to represent that they had insurance to register their automobiles. Owners had to prove financial responsibility only after they were involved in an accident. And she even gives the state law that was there. And unfortunately, our program only allows so many letters, and they cut her off. But my question would be, what again, and I'm going to go back to this because I'm really hammering on this year, and I hope that you'll appreciate that, because Tom, because I know you're so much like me in that. We need to quit passing laws that that are meaningless, that take over local control, that you can't possibly know, that has no teeth. So you can't even adjudicate it. Even if you break it, it doesn't matter, because then whatever, I can't do anything about it. We have to stop passing all of these laws. And I know that you believe that 100%. We need to back up and repeal that law about having compulsory insurance, because my argument has always been the more the government does for you, the less you do for yourself. And it should be on every citizen to get insurance. And here's the thing that really irritates me about this whole stupid thing. They'll say people are always constantly, especially when we talk about education and education appropriations. Well, we have to have this because there are so many poor kids. We have to make sure that poor kids get an education. Well, what about the poor people that can't afford insurance? And then they end up getting a ticket because they couldn't afford insurance. And now you're doing exactly what they did in Europe many, many years ago, and part of the reason why we left there to come here, which is they put you in debtor's prison because they'd make a law that you couldn't possibly, you couldn't meet the specifications of that law because you didn't have enough money to do it. And then they put you in debtor's prison where then you would stay and you didn't even have access to make a living to be able to pay off to the government what you owed them. It just infuriates me, and Steph's going to start talking about my blood pressure again, but you know what I'm talking about. Why don't we just go back and get rid of these stupid laws that are meaningless like that?
Jenny,
Well,
I've got a great lead in for Representative Gann, if he'll take the bait here for just a second, and that is, we can't get anything passed through the state legislature right now because of all the rules, the new rules that were put in place to restrict the ability of people like Tom Gann to promote changes in our legislative laws. That's one of the biggest issues that we've got right now. We've got a really good friend in Jason Murphy, who also writes really great Substack articles that you guys really ought to start looking at as well.
The Oklahoma State Capitol.
The Oklahoma
Substack.
State Capitol. He just published one this week, or yesterday, as a matter of fact, that talks exactly about that, and published all of the people that help fund the status quo. And gosh, I think that it ought to be like racing uniforms, like NASCAR racing uniforms, where they have to wear those stickers on their coats on who's sponsoring them. For anyway, I'm going off a little bit like you do sometimes, ma'am. But anyway, Tom, if you'd like to comment on that, I would sure appreciate hearing your concerns on that area.
Well, thank you for that. I want back up to the state of the state speech by Stitt. You know, he mentioned about debtor's prison and getting back to removing all the fines and fees that someone had, and he pointed out that this person up in the gallery that had served his time and everything, yet still owed $30,000 in court fees and things, and that we really need to fund that area of law and so people would not be in that debt situation. And so that's a noble idea. And I think a lot of that, what the DA council is doing is skirting around the entire appropriation process. And we probably need to bring them back underneath that. And in order to get something like that heard would be very problematic because of the powerful entities up there that have control of our state legislature. And then, of course, the structure that doesn't facilitate any type of interaction. It's just all bottled up into one person. And so, you know, if you want to try to manipulate state government, you just really have three people you got to work, and that's the pro tem, that's the speaker, and the governor. And the legislature has really been hamstrung in the last 8 years through the last administration, and it hadn't in the House, and it hasn't gotten any better with this one. In fact, I think in many ways it's gotten worse. And just last week, I dealt with another rep who was frustrated because they couldn't get their bill out of a certain committee because they just didn't want to hear it. And of course, part of the rule package that I had proposed would have allowed 2 bills to be heard by each member that they would consider priority bills for their constituents. And they passed that up. So we just really have a bad era in state government that hopefully someday people will see the need to have their rep to really truly be able to represent them instead of having the rep acquiesce their authority and their power to one individual within the state. We all got there the same way, and it should not be that way. But it is.
And I think I want to point out that you tried valiantly during the House Organizational Day to get your amendments to those rules put in, as did our new representative up here, Representative Jim Shaw, and he was actually, I mean, like verbally assaulted, verbally bullied on the floor by the speaker's new attorney, who is the man responsible for the conservative purge in 2016. So I don't see that there's any, I think if people don't understand, they need to, and we have nice audience on here again today. I think if you don't understand what Representative Gann just said, let me just make it super, super clear. More than likely, your rep doesn't care as much about you as they care about what lobbyist is going to fund them or where they can go to their next job in government after they get out of their rep's seat or their senator seat. So if you don't like that, you better get involved. And you better make sure that you know who's representing you. And if you don't like them, get them out. That's what just happened in Lincoln County. That's what happened with the incoming pro tem of the Senate. He was discharged and sent home by the people who elected him or who didn't elect him. The only way to get past this is to elect representatives who you know are going to represent you and not lobbyists and not some kind of governmental structure. So I just had to get that out there. There's a couple of things that I needed to, any politician allowing these plate readers and flock cameras should be beaten, tarred, and feathered in the streets. You gotta love Maura. And that's what they used to do, wasn't it? Back in the day that we were talking about debtors' prisons, that's what they used to do. There was Gracie said, a wise old man once told me laws are a burden to the law-abiding because criminals don't care. I think that's absolutely wonderful. Mm-hmm. And then Sarah asks, what are the limitations set upon the legislation and how was this implemented or passed? And I think we covered that. It was just, they passed that you had to have insurance, basically the compulsory insurance law. And then they've just built on top of that. Don't forget, government never shrinks.
Right.
Doesn't shrink. And then Harold said, this was the question I wanted to get in. The fines support what? Where does that money actually go?
The fines from the compulsory insurance law go to support the DA council, district attorney council.
Why though? What does the district attorney's council have to do with any of this?
They're the ones that process this procedure where the person's caught on the camera and then they get notified and then they have to go through this deferment process with the DA council to keep them out of the quote unquote court system and to facilitate payment and get them set up with their insurance. So they control the process, and it's to operate and to fund that process.
So if you get rid of the compulsory insurance law, check me if I'm right, then people are losing their jobs and they don't like that.
Well, it would force the district attorney's council then to go back to the way it was, and they said that was problematic, that's cumbersome, and it's so much better this way. However, there was an argument by Representative Morissette back in 2016 that discussed that in the dialogue on the committee meeting, and he was very articulate about how he didn't really see that as being a problem because he deals with the courts every day. He couldn't really see the problem that was described to him by the lobbyists for the DA council, and it's a very interesting interchange. And of course, Representative Morissette was a Democrat, and he of all people was the one speaking out the most about, hey, the Fourth Amendment protections. You know, where are these? What's wrong with you Republicans? Why are you doing this? And it's just really telling. So that's what the money is used for, is to fund that process within the DA council, and it's self-funding. They don't have to ask the legislature for any appropriations, and therefore they don't really have to be called in and ask what they're doing. Now they will tell you if you ask, and they will send you some information, but they don't go through the appropriation process.
Okay, so we're going to go back again a second because Sarah just She said, my question was in regard to the legislators' hands being tied to get their bills heard. So you might just say quickly, because I know we're over an hour, but you might just tell quickly what happened with the rules this year that changed things to make it even harder, basically, for your bills to get heard.
Okay, well, in order to protect our freedom, it's always been the hardest thing to do is to get a bill passed down to the state capitol. It's designed that way. But our forefathers were very wise in doing that because it protects our freedom. More laws are not good laws. I mean, you have to have a strong filtering process in order to get the best law. So it's always been that the bill gets filed, and then the person it's set to the committee that is germane to the bill, and then the first filter comes to the chairman, and the chairman decides, well, if he likes the bill or not, and then the committee, if he does, the committee hears it, and then there's questions, there's for and against questions, and then there are also an opportunity to amend the bill if they hit a problem or if somebody has a suggestion, and then it gets through that process, and then the next process is it has to go through the filter of the floor leader. Does he have the ability to prevent it from coming to the floor to be heard? Yes, he does. And there's a lot of negotiation that goes on that. And if it makes it to the floor, then you have to convince the entire body to vote it. And then it goes through the entire process in the Senate. Okay. But and it goes through the entire exact process in the Senate where it goes back to the Senate chair. He decides, it goes through the Senate committee. So it's an amazing thing. It really is. And it does, and it's fascinating. It does protect your freedom. However, there are little nuances in the way where the rules bill that we passed allowed the speaker to grab your bill out of a policy committee, say he is being courted by some special interest group and they don't like your bill. He has the ability to take that bill out of a policy committee and put it in the rules committee, which the rules committee is the purgatory where all good bills go to die. And only he, by his authorization and his signature, is the bill author able to get that out of that committee. There's no other way to get it out. So he's got it. He's got it locked, stocked, and barrel there. Now, was there was a process where she probably, if we'd had a better rule, she probably could have maybe lobbied several members of the rules committee. And then if they got enough members on that rules committee, they could have forced the chair to move it on out. But we don't have that. And so it's really controlled and it's really manipulative in certain ways. And there are many roadblocks to hearing your bill, to get your bill heard. The key, though, is to have a bill that's so meritorious, they look really bad if they do anything to prevent it from being heard. And so it's really, it always ought to be about the merit of the bills. You should never trade your bill. You should never say, I'll vote for your bill if you vote for mine. And that's where a lot of that gets done too. So.
You're on mute, Jenny.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. And the other one is, I don't want to vote against my friend's bill.
Yes.
I don't care if you don't want to vote against your seatmate's bill. Up yours. Worry about the rest of us. I mean, but here's the thing I didn't hear you say, and that was this year in the House, we have to go through 2 committees instead of 1 before we even have a chance of getting it on the floor. So before, you'd go to the Common Ed committee and you'd go to the chairman, and the chairman say, okay, yes, I'll hear this, or no, I won't hear this. Well, so now you have bills going into the Common Ed and every other committee. I'm just using that as an example. And it goes into the Common Ed committee, but then even if it gets out of the Common Ed committee, it has to go to the Common Ed Oversight Committee, and it's something else because they lumped two or three, I think, committees together in that oversight committee. And then that oversight committee gets to decide whether it has merit to go on to the floor leader to see if the floor leader has the votes to put it on the floor, which is ridiculous. But anyway, the point of the matter is now we have a second hurdle to get over to even get it to the floor. And I was noticing, and this is me, I'm not dragging you into this one, Tom. This is just Jenny talking here. I went out and was looking at the makeup because I hate that cell phone bill. I hate the cell phone bill. And I know it's stupid to hate it, but I've got a whole bunch of reasons why. And but anyway, I noticed it got passed and I was like, okay, well, I want to know where it's going next. So I went out and looked at the oversight committee. So the way I see it, the regular committee, they put some people on who, you know, are grassroots people, who are people like you that got elected by the people, the grassroots people in your town, in your area, in your district. Well, then you get over into the oversight committee and it's every person that has a lobbyist in their back pocket. Every person that I'm going to disagree with about what the form of representative government actually entails in the state of Oklahoma and in the nation of America. So I'm sitting here going, well, that's great. I don't see how you're even going to get a good bill, a bill that's going to benefit the people and not the lobbyists or not the private business or whatever it is. I don't see how that's going to happen this year.
Well, and that's problematic with having such a top-down direction on who is assigning members to these committees. And of course, with the proposal that I had, it would have been more of a bottom-up where it would have been amongst the caucus members and trying to decide, instead of having one person put to pad those committees with people that he knew would be able to do his bidding if they needed something done like that. And so, yes, that oversight committee adds an additional choke point, and then also provides that 3-point shell game where you can say, well, it's the floor leader, you got to talk to him. But he says, I got to wait till it comes out of this committee. And then that committee said, well, we decided. It's just another
dog chasing its tails to make sure that the big people at the top get their agenda worked out.
And allows a lot of ability to skirt the personal responsibility that might be on a committee chair, to be able to go lobby him and say, hey, here's something you might not have thought about, and we really need this bill.
Well, and I hope, Sarah, that Representative Gann just answered your question. There aren't any checks and balances for the committee chairman or floor leader really anymore. So
right, one of the checks and balances I would have had in my rules, which, by the way, we tried to pass the entire rule. Yeah, what governed the day was Robert's Rules of Order, of course, the parliamentary procedure, but also precedent. And you had to get the speaker's attention before he goes to the floor leader in order to hear something that you propose. And I couldn't do that without in due time, but after calling out his name 3 times. But within that, there was an ability to have the floor leader elected by the caucus and have it an elected position. And so there were some checks and balances that didn't get put in place because they chose the other group of rules.
Well, before we get off of here, because we're coming up on an hour and a half, and I know everybody's got something else to do. And even though we have a really weak, our audience keeps growing. So I guess people are going out and telling people, hey, you got to hear this, which is good. But still in all, what is your bill? Because you have a bill that's going to help with this. Can you talk about your bill a little bit, please?
Which bill is that?
You have a bill to prevent the flock camera.
Okay, I filed. Yes, I've got 3 different versions of the bill, and I have just right now I have a shell bill, but yet I think when you talk about having a repealer and repealing what prohibition we do have, then right now it seems to be better to have it just remain in place until we can get some more discussion on it before we move to try to repeal it. Because if we repeal it, that opens the door for just about any other bill. So there's some situation regarding that we're just working through. But I do have 3 versions of language that could be amended very quickly to any bill that may get some traction. But right now, I think these 2 bills that we have, 1626 in the House and 857 in the Senate, probably just need to be stalled out, and we need to have probably some more talks this summer about some really good, strong legislation and bring some experts in that we can deal with these concerns. And it's just not there right now.
So for people who are watching, I'm going to suggest that they contact their representatives and make sure that they understand that they're completely against this whole ALPR technology, and that they believe that it's that's taking away their constitutional rights to privacy, and that it needs to stop. And so do you want them to watch SB 857 and 1627 and ask them not to be passed? Is that what we want to do?
Yes, we need,
Okay.
we need, we need some eyes on that, and they need to be very aware of that movement, and they can set these alerts. If you can go out to the Oklahoma House website, and you can set up alerts to send you an email once these bills make any type of movement. But for right now, any further, I mean, if they're not going to respect the law that they have, are they going to respect anything they pass? And that's a real issue here. So we have to be real careful. So
Jenny, the last Senate bill that was ran last year, there was two interesting solutions there, or two interesting things that took place there. One of them was that Senator Chuck Hall was one of the few that voted in favor of it. So I want that to be put out there. And the other one was that Senator Weaver, who sponsored that bill, was granted immunity. He didn't even vote on it at all. So
Well, and Senator Weaver was a former highway patrolman, correct?
he was, I think, the director of
He's been
public
a
safety, the Department of Public Safety, one of those. Yeah, he was a high official in that area. So yeah, he's retired and now he's a senator. And anyway, he's also the one that had the interim study last summer about flock cameras.
Okay, well, it seems to me, and just check me if I'm wrong so we can get out of here this morning, since we've got Rep. Siegel coming up at 1 on tax credits, and you guys are definitely going to want to see that one. To get out of here, the best thing to do is, let's go over it again. Make sure that you contact your reps and senators and say, I've been watching this. If you're not going to protect my rights, then I'm going to find a way to get you out of that seat, right? So that's number one. Number 2, follow the laws. It's SB 857 and HB 1626. You want to make sure that these laws do not get passed. This was their attempt to put guardrails, whatever it is, on this bill. And like Representative Gann said, if they're not going to follow, they're not even supposed to be taking this data. It's illegal for them to take this data anyway. How are guardrails going to solve that problem? So we just need to stop everything until Representative Gann can come back over the summer, probably with Marven Goodman, and create another interim study that will get all of this solved. But boy, I'd love you to take that shell bill though, Tom, and wipe out the compulsory insurance.
Well, that may we will definitely take that into consideration as we delve into this. But we
get rid of that.
Yes, and we would be. But that getting rid of Title 47 in that section would open it up. It would eliminate the prohibition that's there as well. So we don't want to do that.
Well, yeah, that's for sure. Well, Marvin, anything before? Just check out your Substack, Sooner Sentinel. You've got another one out today. I can't keep up with that. I can't get anything written on my own because I keep reading what you write. Stop it.
Thank you. I think. I think we've pretty much covered it from tip to tail today on Flock. Again, I've got this article coming out Monday morning, and it's going to be a barn burner, I think. Anyway, thank you so much for having us on.
Well,
yes, thank you. Thank you, Jenny. Thank you.
Yeah, well, I want to make one more comment real quick before you guys get off. Ultimately, if we don't stop this right now, ultimately, what does this look like in 5 years, 10 years? Because it's all about the data. What is that data going to show? Is it going to be, obviously it's going to be complete dragnet surveillance, but I wrote a couple things down here while everybody was talking. What are they going to do? They're going to know all of our driving habits, where we go, where we shop. Even I would even go to the effect of they're going to know somewhat your medical affiliations. Are you going to certain doctors' clinics? Are you getting certain types of treatments? Those things like that. I mean, where's it going to stop? Like every single driving infraction that you do, is that now going to just be a ticket that comes to you in the mail? So, in my opinion, that data is, gold to the flock company and to the state and all these agencies. If we don't stop it now, where's it ever going to stop? How are they ever going to, put a handle on this thing?
Well, I know that General Motors was sued by Attorney General Paxton in Texas for tracking without people's consent all their driving data, like how you brake, how fast you drive in certain speed zones, and those type of things, in order to rate people's insurance. And of course, the FTC has put a moratorium on the ability of GM to do that. And I think AG Paxton will probably reap some reward from that, as he did from Meta, that he sued and won $1 billion. So it's probably anything's imaginable, from AI to geofencing to you name it. It's all about control.
Well, and I also worry about the real ID, and we need to have a discussion about that coming up too, because years and years ago, when they started talking about the real ID, one of the things that was the biggest argument was all of that data goes to those big data centers. And,
Yes.
I said something, well, I actually called Josh Frakeen and told him that when I was in Arizona and coming back on a flight, they literally they scanned the barcode on the back of my driver's license, and didn't make me show my boarding pass to get through security.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
So we've got to talk about this, because we've got to repeal the real ID, and that's supposed to be coming up in March. And I'll just tell you right now, policeman, I'm not going to do it. So track me down. Won't do it. Boys, thank you. Boys, men, representative, thank you so much for joining us today. So much appreciate it. Keep us in the loop here and help us know what to do. And we just appreciate your time so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having an outlet for us. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Bye-bye. So that was incredibly informative. Had so many people on watching, had a great, it was like the longer we went, the more people got on. And I think it was because people were going, go over here. They're talking about this. Yeah. So, and that's a big thing. To me, Sarah says, thank you.
I'm telling you, Jenny, this is just a complete inroad to just total control, tax you by the mile, total police state, total, just, God, I just can't believe that people allow it. But I don't think people even know. They don't know the extent.
I don't think they know the extent, number one, and I don't think they believe it when they hear it. And all they would need to do would be to look at Europe right now. That's what they need to do. If you look at Europe and you look at England, there are so many of these ALPRs in and around England that there's been a movement, and there are a whole bunch of people that go around and they, block out the cameras.
Or tear the camera poles down themselves.
They do that too, because people are just sick of being surveilled constantly. And as well as I do, we've talked about this before, anything that happens in Europe finds its way over here. Yeah. And if you don't think that this is going to be the way it is, because the way it is the way it is in England right now, and in London particularly, I just don't, slap yourself. Stop right now and just slap yourself.
And here's the deal. Have we not been able to solve crime up until this point? Have we not been able to investigate and solve crime and, have good, police work up to this point? We have to switch over. And I'm telling you, it's just like the school, like they're going, they're test running all this virtual school stuff, all these teachers, they're all for this. they're gonna obsolete themselves. You're literally gonna all these teachers in the future are gonna go away. You're gonna have a complete virtual school.
Yeah.
It's almost the same thing with
AI,
with law enforcement. You're going to have complete surveillance. Why do you need all these police officers driving the roads anymore? You don't need all that. You can literally detect crime in real time, and respond accordingly. I mean, it's so insane that we're actually getting to that point.
Well, and again, that's what they do again in London. I hate to go back there, but I'm trying to make people understand that this isn't, we're not making this up. It's actually happening. It is working its way into itself over here. And what they do in London, which is part of the reason why they're ripping down those stupid things, is if somebody rolls a stop sign, if somebody doesn't stop fully at whatever their little driving infraction happens to be, they get a bill in the mail.
Yeah.
So they don't even get a cop that comes, hey, stop. And it's not even that. They get it in the mail and then they have to pay it. Can you even imagine?
Yeah. Well, I wanted to say, you asked a question at the very start of the podcast, kind of to Tom and Marvin about, well, a lot of people say I'm not doing anything wrong, so what's the big deal? I answer that question because I get that all the time. I get that all the time. Why do you have a password on your Facebook account? Why do you lock your car? Why do you lock your house? You're not doing anything wrong. Why lock your car if you're not doing anything wrong? The bad guys don't care if you're doing anything right or wrong. They're going to do whatever they want to do. And if they're going to break the law, they're going to. It has nothing to do with, if you're a good person or not. It's your responsibility to secure yourself. It's your responsibility to provide safety for yourself and your family and your personal property and all that. It's not the government's.
Yeah, I'm looking back to see what Gracie said, because she made that comment about a wise man once told her, that it's not the people that you'll have to put it in again, Gracie, because I think I lost it. But basically she just said what you said. And I remember when I was not terribly engaged, because there was a time, believe it or not, when I was not very engaged in politics. And I remember this was right after that. Thank you. God love you. Because it's true.
Yeah. 100%.
100%. So, I remember I was not very engaged. And I remember it was right after 9/11. And I remember, that Bush put in the Patriot Act. And I remember saying to my husband at the time, I remember it was like, well, Dave, what does it matter? I mean, we don't do anything wrong. So it's not as though I never had that thought myself, but I think when you know better, you do better. When you learn more, you know how to do better. And I think that's the thing. And if you look at what happened, and this isn't going to be popular with some people, I'm sorry, I don't really care. Ran out of my don't care. You look at what happened with the people on January 6th and the fact that they were basically political prisoners and due process wasn't even afforded them. And due process is the only thing that sets America apart from any other country in the world, is our specific form of due process. And when you remove that, which you do by surveilling me at a daggum stoplight, you're breaking that trust right there by surveilling me. I mean, I don't know why people can't get more uptight about that, because Julia said something earlier about she said, I said that was not good. And my husband said, oh, well, no. Well, I think Dave said that. I was the only one that was going, oh, well. But I think the point to the matter is this. It doesn't matter whether you feel like you're doing the right thing or not. If somebody wants to get you at something, if somebody wants a revenue stream, because don't forget, that's what and what Representative Gann basically told us, that these flock cameras, these ALPR cameras, are there to provide a revenue stream for this, what is it, the District Attorneys Association or whatever that was. So if they want a revenue stream, then they're going to try to do what they can to catch you doing anything. And that's the point. You may think you're doing nothing, but do you know how many laws are on the books in Oklahoma that we probably break every day because stupid legislators keep putting stupid laws on the books?
Well,
You're only
that's how you
this
do it.
far away from being a
Yeah.
political prisoner yourself. I
Yeah.
mean, come on.
Total surveillance. You know, I was gonna. I probably need to send this article over to Marvin. This is in Virginia. The Institute for Justice filed a lawsuit, and I don't know if Marvin. Maybe he needs. Let me put this up here. I was just looking at this the other day. I got to change something here.
Well, don't do what we've done before and accidentally put your email account or something up on the.
Yeah. Well, this is an article in Gizmodo, and the Institute for Justice is literally suing. I don't know if they've got a guy in here, but they're literally suing Norfolk, Virginia, who's got a ton of these cameras over the whole Fourth Amendment and, the unreasonable search and seizure. They've got 172 of these flock cameras in the city that all with AI passively check cars. I need to send that article to Marvin because that may be something he wants to include and write about, because this is pretty recent. This is from October of 24. So
send it to me as well, because then I can put it in the written version of this when I put it up on the website.
There's some pretty good information in that article right there.
So Sarah,
because they link to the actual lawsuit. I haven't been able to go out yet and read the lawsuit, but.
Well, Sarah asked, will this live be able to watch from the beginning? I came in late. Yes, absolutely. It's stored on our Rumble channel, Rope Report, and it's stored on our YouTube channel, also at Rope Report. So you can go right there and find it in both of those places. And then also, for those of you who might be new to the podcast, I do put up little clips that are also little 2 and 3 minute clips, because we all know that most people don't want to wait an hour and 46 minutes, which is where we are right now. They don't want to watch all of that. So I put these little clips up on our YouTube account, and you can share those as well along, with other people, and then link back to the live, and then people can see the whole thing. And Julie put her comment back up. By the way, Chinese rose gardens are beautiful. In China, you get a hit on your social credit score if you pick a rose out of the city rose garden. Your credit score determines if you can buy food, shelter, work. That's where we're headed. I've told you before that my husband works with and has been around some Chinese nationalist people that he's worked with. And one of them just recently said that he went back to China. He's now an American citizen, but he went back to China to visit his parents who were still there. And he said that it had gotten so much worse in the 2 years since he had visited, that literally he was behind a man at the grocery store, and that they looked at the guy in front of him, his social credit score, and told him that they wouldn't sell him anything at that store.
Yeah. It's a matter of time. It's literally a matter of time. If we don't get a handle on these things now, like you said, it's test run in Europe and China and places like that, and London, and then it's going to make its way here, and then it's game over at that point. It's game over, because we're the last man standing against this stuff.
Well, and it's like we've said 100,000 times on this program. And there are sometimes I want to rent a billboard, just put my money into a billboard and rent a billboard that basically says, wake up, your state isn't red. I mean, I think so many people just go, oh, it's going to be great because Trump's president. We have a Republican majority in our legislature, and I just don't need to worry about all of these things. Well, the problem is that our political parties, that it's just nonsense. I mean, you can put an R by your name and literally be a Democrat. And I actually had a friend of mine that I went to homeschool with. I took a screenshot off of her Facebook page where she basically said, because she's a Democrat, and she basically said, you just need to go register as a Republican so you can vote in these primaries. And we want to get, certain people. So the idea of political party is just freaking nonsense at this point in time. And if you think R means red, if you think red means Oklahoma, please slap yourself again. I mean, I'm sorry to keep asking you to hurt yourself, but you're going to have to wake up and realize that you're not where you think you are. You're not in Kansas anymore.
Wow.
Steph says everyone here will have a CS score. I love our viewers. They're the best. I mean, they really are just the best. We can hear all of this stuff and still end up laughing about it because it's so ridiculous. But we got to get off because we've got another one at 1 today. Our live podcast comes back with Jay Stiegel, who's going to talk about tax credits. And if you don't think that's important, slap yourself again, because we've got our governor who's coming in saying, you know, he did his State of the State address. Well, we have to lower income tax rates. And don't forget, Representative Stiegel has a bill to do that. But how are you going to lower income tax rates when you keep giving away billions of Oklahoma taxpayer dollars to private companies to restructure commerce in Oklahoma to make sure that we've
billion
got
dollar companies on top of that,
work?
Jenny?
Yeah.
$1 billion companies on top of that.
Yeah.
Make almost $1 billion in profit on top of it.
Yes, that's let's do a kiss and go for the billboard. I like that. Is that concerning the homeschool tax credit? It's not just the homeschool tax credit. It's everything. I mean, there's a conservative legislator, Cody Maynard, has a tax credit for pregnancy centers. I think it is. I'll have to go back and look. We've got to stop with the tax credit. Just don't take the money out of my pocket in the first place and let me spend it where I want. That's the whole idea behind economic freedom. But yet, legislators will say, oh, I believe in economic freedom. I believe in all of that. And then they get up there and go, well, I need a tax credit for this. And I want a tax credit for that. And then it's just nuts. We got to stop doing it. Just don't take it out of my pocket in the first place. So if they don't want to slap themselves, I'm sure their volunteers will.
Oh, we can get lines. We can get lines of people for that.
I think so. All right. Well, it's been a pleasure to be with you again, Mr. Michael. I always love our podcast. I just think I love the fact that we can bring these things to people. And oh, wait, hold on. Sarah's got one more comment before we get off of here. Just asking because a lot of homeschoolers have questions. I'm seeing a ton of questions about, so I want to spread the word. Sarah, Robert is on here this morning. We need to have a podcast with Robert. We're covered up in February, but we can get a podcast in March to go back over the tax credit. I would, if you will go to our YouTube channel and search tax credit, you'll see a lot of information on the homeschool tax credit, and hopefully that will help you and kind of give you some background. But yes, we need to get some homeschoolers on next month to talk about the tax credit and why they want out and all of those different things. So thank you for that comment. So hopefully we'll see everybody at 1:00 with Representative Stiegel. And we just appreciate you so much being here. And oh, I forgot. I interviewed 2 candidates last night. Go to the YouTube channel. I just got their interviews up today. Katrina Avers for Ward 3. There's actually dark money being poured into an Oklahoma City municipal election against this woman. I was wowed by her interview. Oh my goodness. If I had half of the brain of Katrina Avers, well, I'm not sure what I could do. I might be queen of the world. That woman is impressive. And yet they're using dark money in the election to get the incumbent Barbara Peck re-elected. So you want to watch that interview. Also, Brian Logan, who is SD8, running for SD8. I interviewed him last night as well. He's a really great down-to-earth guy. I just suggest you run out to the YouTube channel to Candidate Corner and look those 2 up, and I'll post those later on today. So did I miss anything else before we get off?
I don't think so.
Okay. All right. Thank you again for being with us. We love you. You're a great audience. Hopefully we'll see you again at 1:00. Thanks for being with us. Bye-bye.